Once upon a time, in a remote mountainous village of Japan, there lived a young man. He worked tirelessly, but had very little to show for it. One winter's day, as he was returning home with a bundle of firewood, he heard a peculiar sound that piqued his curiosity. He followed the sound and discovered a magnificent crane ensnared in a trap. His heart ached for the helpless creature, and he quickly set it free, offering some comforting words. The crane seemed to respond with a grateful cry and soared high into the sky. A few days later, during a heavy snowfall, there was a knock on his door. On this bitterly cold night, a young woman stood before him, lost and seeking shelter. With kindness in his heart, the young man welcomed her inside, even though he had very little to offer. The snowstorm raged on for days, and the young woman's presence brought warmth and joy to the once lonely house. She cooked, cleaned, and mended, making it feel like a flower had blossomed in their home. The young man couldn't help but wish for her to stay and be with him forever. When the snowstorm finally subsided and the sky turned clear, the young woman made a heartfelt request. She asked for a room where she could weave, and the young man readily obliged, creating a weaving room at the back of their home. However, she had one condition: he must never peek inside while she was weaving. For 3 days and nights, the young woman worked tirelessly on her loom as her husband faithfully kept his promise not to look. On the morning of the 4th day, she emerged from the weaving room, presenting him with the most exquisite and smooth cloth he had ever seen. Overwhelmed with pride, he took the cloth to town, and it captivated everyone who saw it. People marveled at its beauty, and it sold instantly. The young man returned home, bursting with excitement to share the news with his wife. She was pleased with his success, and they celebrated the new year with more joy and comfort than ever before. After some time, the young woman went back to the weaving room and asked her husband not to peek again. She continued to weave, even through the night. On the morning of the 5th day, she emerged, the cloth even more beautiful, but she looked visibly thinner. Concerned, the young man inquired about her health, but she brushed off his worries. Shortly after, a wealthy draper from town visited, willing to pay a high price for the cloth. The young man told the draper about his wife's promise not to reveal her weaving process. The draper insisted that it was unusual for a husband not to know how the cloth was made. The young man was torn, but ultimately refused to break his promise. That night, he shared the draper's generous offer with his wife, hoping for a more comfortable life. She agreed to weave one last time and returned to the room. This time, however, the sound of the loom occasionally stopped, and the young man couldn't shake his worries about his wife's health. He remembered the draper's words about the secret of the cloth and decided to take a peek. To his astonishment, he discovered that his wife had transformed into a crane, weaving her own feathers into the cloth. Overcome with shock and regret, the young man called out to the crane, realizing the truth. It was the same crane he had rescued. She confessed her identity and the reason for her transformation. Tears filled his eyes as he begged her not to leave, but she was bound by her nature. With a heavy heart, she bid him farewell and flew away, leaving the young man standing in the snow, gazing at the crane in the sky. And so, the young man learned a bittersweet lesson about the consequences of breaking promises, and the mountain once again echoed with the sound of his solitude.